How are you today? Welcome to Equip, Build, Mature. And I want to share a word of encouragement with you on this Tuesday, my afternoon in Crete. We're going to begin in Romans chapter 4, verse 16, which I believe summarizes the narrative that we're going to be looking at today. Romans 4:16. This is why the promise is by faith, so that it may be according to grace, to guarantee it to all the descendants, not only to the one who is of the law, but also to the one who is of Abraham's faith. He is the father of us all. For 40 years, God led Israel through the wilderness. And during that time, the generation that would not believe God after they left Egypt, they all died. So as God led them near the Jordan River, he called Moses to the top of Mount Nebo. It was just across from the city of Jericho. And God had told Moses that he could not cross the Jordan and enter into the land that God had promised Abram. But God did take him to a place where he could look across the river, and he, with his own eyes, could see the land of promise before he died. So, at 120 years old, Moses died there on the top of Mount Nebo. God chose Joshua to be Israel's new leader to replace Moses. And God wanted Joshua to enter the land of promise and conquer the cities of Canaan. So the story begins in Joshua chapter 1. The first city in the path of the Israelites was the city of Jericho, well fortified with huge walls. So Joshua sent 2 men to scout the land, especially the city of Jericho. They got to Rahab's house, and the 2 spies stayed there. And at the time, Rahab's lifestyle did not please God at all. But God had a plan. He had a plan to use Rahab for a very special purpose. Someone, though, in Jericho noticed the spies were in Rahab's house. Well, someone went and told the king, and they said, some of the Israelite men have come here tonight to investigate the land. So the king sent word to Rahab to bring out the men who had entered her house because they were spies and they needed to be dealt with. Well, Rahab hid the 2 men up on her roof under stalks of flax. She told the king's men that the spies came to her house, but she had no idea where they were from. They left when it got dark. She told the king's men that she had no idea where they went. But if they hurried, they might catch them. So the king's men left to search for the 2 spies. Rahab did not yet understand at this point in her life God's law about not lying. So Rahab went up to the roof, and she spoke with the 2 men, the 2 Hebrew men. And she told them Jericho's people had heard of Israel, and they'd heard of Israel's God. They knew that Israel's God had delivered them from Egypt, that he had parted the Red Sea so that they could escape. She said that she knew that their God is the God of heaven and the God of earth. And she reminded them of how she was kind to them. So she begged them to be kind in return to her and to save her family from the death that she knew was coming. So the men told her if she and her family kept the secret, they would be spared. They would be treated fairly, and they would be treated with great kindness. Well, Rahab's house was built on the city wall. So Rahab hung a rope through the window, and the spies climbed down and they escaped. And the men told Rahab to hang a scarlet cord in the window so they would know which house was hers when they came and destroyed the city. They told her that she really did need to keep her family in her house. But if anyone told about their mission, then their agreement with each other was over. So she agreed. And she sent them on their way and left the scarlet cord hanging out of her window. Well, the spies, they did escape the city, and they went and they hid in the mountains for 3 days until the king's men quit searching for them. They went back to Joshua on the other side of the Jordan, and they told him everything that had happened to them, everything they'd seen, everything they'd experienced, everything they'd heard. And they reported that everyone in Canaan saw that God had given all the land to them. Even before they crossed the Jordan, the people in Canaan knew that God was giving them this land. Everyone in the land was panicked because of their God, because of Israel, and especially because of Israel's God. Well, then God stopped the flow of the Jordan River, and he allowed Joshua to lead the Israelites across on dry land to the west side of the Jordan. This was very similar to what God did as the Hebrews crossed the Red Sea on dry land. God gave Israel the victory over Jericho, just as he had promised. And Joshua kept their promise to Rahab. He sent the 2 spies to her house, and he brought her and her family safely out of Jericho. Rahab was allowed to live in peace among Israel for the rest of her life. Because she had protected the spies. She helped Israel to enter the land that God had promised Abraham. Later, Rahab married a man named Salmon. And she and Salmon had a son named Boaz. And he married Ruth, a Moabitess. And Boaz and Ruth had a son named Obed. And Obed was the father of Jesse, who was the father of King David. So this lineage continued until the birth of Jesus, who was God's promised Messiah. We read of this in the lineage account in Matthew 1 through 16. It's interesting, in Hebrews 11:31, it mentions Rahab as a woman of faith. And she is a great example, not just a woman, but of a person who is changed by God because of their faith. She had heard of and she saw the many amazing works of God, and so she chose to trust him as her God. And as she learned God's truth, she chose to obey him. The story of Rahab and the 2 spies offers several encouraging principles about faith, integrity, and the power of belief. Rahab's faith in God's power, even though she did not know his truth, led her to hide the spies and receive salvation. The willingness of the spies to keep their vow to Rahab demonstrates the importance of integrity and God's faithfulness to keep his promises. So today I encourage you to remember these principles from this narrative about Rahab and the 2 spies. First, remember this principle. Faith is not passive. Faith requires action and obedience. Second, redemption is always possible. God is able to transform us from our sinful past and use us in his eternal mission. Third principle, God is willing to demonstrate his mercy and his grace toward all sinners who desperately want to change their lives and give their life totally to him. Fourth principle, God has the power to protect and deliver those who trust in him no matter what the situation is. Fifth principle, your faith can impact many people. Sixth principle, obeying God's word with action is absolutely essential for staying on his path towards our salvation. So today, I want to encourage you, live in faith, trust God's promises, and actively seek his will for your life. Guys, I hope you have a great day. Thanks for spending some time here with me. Hope you continue to stay on the path and continue to have the traits of God and to live by faith. Take care.